Welcome to the Wolves and Sheep podcast. I'm Roberta Glass, and I will be talking to you about the Heather Elvis case for the next few minutes. Heather Elvis was a 19-year-old girl who went missing December 18th, 2013. She was a hostess at the Tilted Kilt, a Hooters-type establishment. She was also engaged in an affair with Sidney Moore, a handyman at the Tilted Kilt. Now, when Heather Elvis went missing, Sidney Moore was a married man, and he was married to Tammy Moore. Heather Elvis had gone missing. Her friends were upset. Her family was heartbroken. And Tammy Moore posted this message on Facebook, and let me read it to you. This was my introduction to the case, was this Facebook message. This is Tammy Moore on Facebook. Well, Sidney cheated on me in the months of September, October with a psycho whore who has since went missing, and now her crazy daddy is threatening to kill my children and Sidney, therefore making Sidney stupid. This girl grabbed his business card out of the office at her workplace and had fantasies about him as far back as March, but had talked about it in July, naming him. I don't know any other word to describe my husband at this point. All you have to do is research this girl's Twitter, although 4 months of it have gone missing in the past couple of weeks, and her Tumblr to see what a twisted person she truly is. I could care less, seeing that I had a boyfriend of my own for the past couple of years. But when someone brings my children into the scenario, it's a whole other story. I will not tolerate anyone hurting my children because my husband banged a hoe 3 times in the back seat of her car and nothing more. I could care less what he screwed around with, but the fact that this jerk is stalking my family is unacceptable. Now, that's Tammy Moore's Facebook post, and I came to the conclusion after reading that Tammy Moore did not have an open marriage. She did not have a boyfriend. She had a husband who she was clinging on to and controlling, and she was responsible for Heather Elvis's disappearance. Now, the statement analysis conclusion was quite different than that, but I was certain with little evidence besides that, and this was a gut feeling that Tammy Moore knew where Heather Elvis was at that point. Now, when she was charged with murder and her husband was charged as murder, I felt vindicated. So that was my introduction to this case. Now, to fully understand this case, we have to go back to the spring of 2013. Heather Elvis is a 19-year-old girl. She is the wild child of her family. Her sister is a pageant princess, a perfectionist. She is the rebel without a cause, as she identified herself as such to her friend. And she started lusting after the handyman at work, Sidney Moore, and they started having an affair. And he started coming into work, giving her bagels and coffee just to see her and talking to her, and they were having an affair, and she came into quite the criticism from her coworkers. One coworker left up a message on the blackboard saying, "Hey girls, do not have an affair with a maintenance man, or stop effing the maintenance man. He's married," I believe the quote was. And Heather Elvis went through a lot of crap from her coworkers for having this affair, but there was a sexual compatibility and an attraction that could not be denied. She broke it off. She started gaining weight. Her coworkers said she started gaining weight around her breasts and her hips. She had to go up in size in her tilted kilt costume. She had taken a pregnancy test that came back as inconclusive, but most of her coworkers believed she was pregnant. She also was getting threatening texts from Sidney Moore's wife, Tammy Moore. She also came to work with a black eye. And her explanation for that was not believed by her coworkers. So there is an insinuation that she had some kind of physical altercation with Tammy Moore. This all came out in the first trial of that first trial of Sidney Moore for kidnapping. Both were charged, Sidney and Tammy, but Sidney was tried alone. And in that trial, what moved me so much was the testimony of the date she went on that night. So, go back. Heather Elvis was having this affair through the spring of 2013. Through the fall of 2013, she broke it off. She was heartbroken, but she decided to move on in December. And she went out on a date with a guy who she went to high school with, Stephen Giraldi. So the night of December 18th, she was going on her first real date after this affair. And the description of that date in the trial, Stephen Giraldi described on the stand, picking up Heather, taking her out to a restaurant, having dinner, no alcoholic beverages, teaching her how to drive stick shift in the parking lot. Heather Elvis was so proud that she learned how to drive stick shift. She sent her father a text saying, "Look at me, I'm a pro." And then Stephen took her to his mother's house to watch a movie. Then he was getting late. He drove her back to her own house. They shared a kiss. That was the end of the night. She was very excited about that date. And what moved me so much about that testimony was that it was a teenage date. This girl was 19 years old. Now, no alcohol, movie at the parents' house. I mean, that is a teenager's date. And to think of what she was robbed of think of all the difference between being 19 and, say, 29, right? So at 19, you are too young to know the difference between a sexual connection and love, or between a dangerous man and a dynamic man. And I believe Heather Elvis made that mistake, and it cost her life. Also in that trial, you got a sense from every coworker what a kind of free spirit she was, and what a kind of lovely person she was to be around, and special person that is missed. And so when that trial ended in a hung jury, I paid attention for the second trial. And the second trial was on obstruction of justice. And how did Sidney Moore obstruct justice, you might ask? Well, the night that Heather Elvis went missing. Okay, so after Stephen Giraldi drops her off, Heather Elvis gets a call. We now know it was from a payphone. Sidney Moore went to a payphone to call her. Didn't use his cell phone, went to a payphone, called her and said, "I'm leaving my wife. Come meet me at Peachtree Landing." Heather Elvis was quite emotional, called her friend, said, "Sidney just called me. He's leaving his wife. He wants to meet me. This is 3 a.m. at Peachtree Landing. What should I do?" The friend says, "Don't do anything. Just sleep on it." Heather Elvis says, "Okay, I'll sleep on it. Thanks. Love you. Bye. Love you, friend. Bye." Okay. She doesn't do that. She meets him in the middle of nowhere at Peachtree Landing, which is a boat landing in the middle of nowhere in the middle of the night. And she's never seen again. Her car is still there, but no Heather Elvis. We also have on footage Sidney Moore's car truck making its way to Peachtree Landing at that time that he has agreed to meet her. His truck was identified by its headlights. That's just an interesting little fact. So Sidney Moore still contends that wasn't his truck. He also told the police, "I don't know where Heather Elvis is. I haven't talked to her." And the police says, "Yo, buddy, we have you on tape making this payphone call." He says, "Oh, yeah, now I remember. I made that call to tell her to leave me alone. I didn't want to talk to her. She was leaving me notes, these notes that no one has seen. She was bothering me." There's no evidence that Heather Elvis bothered Sidney Moore before her disappearance, in the month before her disappearance. So how did he obstruct justice? He lied about the payphone call, which was a crucial call, and he delayed the search for Heather Elvis with his nonsense. And he was convicted easily. Prosecution was much more prepared. Second trial, he was convicted. He's doing 10 years for obstruction of justice. There was a bombshell in that trial. A relative of Tammy Moore said, "I was there the night that Sidney got out of prison when he was being held for, I believe, murder. When he was bailed out, I was there, that party. He showed me his cell phone with a picture. And he knows more about Heather Elvis's disappearance than he's saying. And there is no description of what was in that cell phone picture. And perhaps that will be revealed when Tammy Moore comes forward, when she has her trial. When Tammy Moore has her trial for kidnapping. The prosecution strategy was to divide the couple. Tammy Moore has quite a hold on her husband, according to what her husband, Sidney Moore, told the police. She handcuffs him to the bed every night after this affair. She was so jealous. So we shall see. And I didn't know Heather Elvis. I never met her. But after watching these two trials, I think about her quite a bit. And I think about how unfair it is that Tammy Moore is walking around. She is known to take on her children's Facebook and post as her kids. She's known as taking on different, she's suspected of taking on different personas to confuse the case in social media. She is a dark and disturbed person. And I hope in the next year that Sidney Moore is, the next 10 years that Sidney Moore is sitting in prison, he will come clean with what he knows. Because for the people like me, and for the parents, for the grieving parents of Heather Elvis, who are waiting to know where their daughter is, I'm hoping that as he sits in prison, he will come clean with what he knows. Because this is going to be our year, I'm hoping, for Heather Elvis and the truth.